Okay, we're going to palpate the bony structure. So here is my thumb. So thumb side is going to be the radius. Pinky side is the ulna. And the head of the radius is up here connecting to the humerus, but the head of the ulna is actually on the, that would be the distal end of the forearm, while the head of the radius is on the proximal side of the forearm. Styloid process of the radius is going to be on the lateral side of the forearm, and the styloid process of the ulna is going to be on the medial side. The anatomical snuff box, I don't know if you could see, it's like this little triangular shape. Okay, moving on to the hand. Scaphoid is going to be the main carpal bone. This side, and then on this side. Scaphoid, and then the carpal bones are going to be, let's see. So from anatomical position, that would be on proximal. So carpal bones are going to be proximal, and then going proximal to distal, it's going to go carpal bones, metacarpal bones, and our phalanges. So phalanges 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then metacarpals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so beginning with the wrist flexors, they all have their origins on the medial epicondyle of the humerus, so on the medial side. Let's start with the flexor carpi radialis. It goes from the medial epicondyle of the humerus to the base of the second and third metacarpals. So from here, base of the second and third. It's involved in flexion of the wrist, abduction of the wrist, weak pronation of the forearm, and weak flexion of the elbow. Moving on to the palmaris longus, it goes from the medial epicondyle to the base of to the palmaris aponeurosis of the second, third, fourth, and fifth metacarpals, medial condyle to here. It's also involved in flexion of the wrist and flexion of the wrist and weak flexion of the elbow. And then moving on to flexor carpi ulnaris, goes from the medial epicondyle of the humerus to the base of the fifth metacarpal, and this one is involved in flexion of the wrist, adduction of the wrist, and weak flexion of the elbow. So those are the 3 wrist flexors that I want to talk about. So beginning with the wrist extenders now on the originating from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Before we were on the wrist flexors on the medial epicondyle, now we're on the lateral side. For the wrist extensors, we're going to start with extensor carpi radialis longus, running from the lateral epicondyle to the base of the second metacarpal. And then extensor carpi radialis brevis goes from the lateral epicondyle to the base of the third metacarpal. Both of these muscles are involved in wrist extension and wrist abduction, as well as weak flexion of the elbow. And then extensor carpi ulnaris is going to run from the lateral epicondyle to the base of the fifth metacarpal. This one is involved in wrist extension and adduction of the wrist and weak extension of the elbow rather than weak extension of the elbow. And then lastly, we're going to go to extensor digitorum. Again, it goes from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus to the tendons of these 4 fingers, excluding the thumb. So metacarpals and phalanges 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this one is going to help with extension of the second, third, fourth, and fifth phalanges. So better to see this way. This would be flexion, and this is extension, flexion. So this extensor digitorum is just extension. And then for the wrist is involved in extension of the wrist. So extension of the wrist and weak extension of the elbow joint for extensor digitorum.